Well, Lionel Messi's second season at Inter Miami produced a league record point total and supporters' shield, but it ended in disappointing fashion with an early playoff exit. An offseason shakeup soon followed. Javier Mascherano arrived as the new head coach, replacing Tata Martino, while Messi confidant Guillermo Hoyos stepped in as the club's new director of football. A roster overhaul has also followed, and here's a look at the off-season moves, including the sales of Diego Gomez and Facundo Farias, and the arrivals of Velasco Segovia and Gonzalo Lujan, among others. Now, with new men in charge and an overhauled roster, Messi and friends, they set their sights on more trophies, including the CONCACAF Champions Cup. There are two teams that are going to be suffering in some cold, whether the game was today or tomorrow. It's cold out there in Kansas City for this Inter Miami KC matchup. Felipe, I have to start with the obvious of the match has been changed from today to tomorrow because of the weather. I've got to ask you, though, how much does Messi influence the change in date of this schedule? Because to me, that's such a big question.
Are you saying that Messi controls the weather? Is that what you're intimating?
I'm saying someone named Messi might control the league. But Felipe, you tell me more on this.
Well, I mean, listen, the reports yesterday were unconfirmed. I know that some reports popped up that Messi was not willing to play in that type of weather. There was a quote from Luis Suarez from back in the day saying, he didn't enjoy playing in Paris in that type of cold weather either. But, he's never faced Midwestern wet winters. And I think that's the big issue here. And it was honestly a CONCACAF decision. I mean, today, canceling the game and moving it to tomorrow, I don't know what difference it's going to make. The high tomorrow in Kansas City is going to be 9 degrees. And so it's going to be really, really cold, and it's going to affect everybody. I think Messi being sort of part of the news cycle yesterday around the cancellation, obviously raised questions, but I don't think it has anything to do with him. I really do think that CONCACAF, as the governing body of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, is really looking to see, like, how do we not just postpone this and move it to another city? And I think right now they're playing safe, and they're going to try to play this game tomorrow.
So, Felipe, let's use this as an example about the calendar or potential calendar switch for MLS, where they do want to follow the rest of the world. Well, games would be being played in Kansas City at this time. Is that smart, giving this into consideration or taking this into consideration for the future of the league?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of this story of the Kansas City, the SKC and Inter Miami, first round of this cup, is because MLS still hasn't decided that, Jimmy, obviously, but they are in discussions to see if they move the calendars to a fall spring calendar. And to your point, they would be playing matches in some of the coldest regions of the country, some of these MLS teams. And so I think this is certainly something that's going to be pointed at. If these discussions continue, throughout this season, and again, the report from The Athletic was if this were to happen, if the calendar were to change, it would be implemented by 2026 after that World Cup. And I think now this is showing that even these well-established MLS clubs that have the best facilities, great facilities, the fan bases, and really everything that you need, do they have the capacity and the ability to play these games in frigid weather? So this is going to be, I think, a test. Maybe this will be a test tomorrow when we see how do the players react, how do the fans react, is this playable right now? And that'll be something I think MLS officials will certainly look at.
Yeah, when I wanted to get out of training or games, usually trainings, I'd fake the injury. Oh, my knee suddenly hurts. Sorry, I got to go back inside in the warmth. Can't train. But, that's why I didn't become a professional player. But, Felipe, we get to see this new kind of reinvented Inter Miami team tomorrow for really the first time. I mean, what can we expect from this team? And do you feel like there's a little bit more pressure on this Inter Miami team this year?
Well, I think what we can expect are goals. If you look at the way that the team has been, I guess, rebuilt, it's not really a huge rebuild, but they did, they sold players. Diego Gomez, I think, is key here because he was the type of player that I think really blossomed into the right type of player that can play with Messi in midfield, really take a lot of the weight off of Messi off the ball. And so now the players that they've brought in are very similar to Diego Gomez. They're sort of like midfielders dressed, they're second strikers dressed as midfielders. They're wingers that can move inside, play in half spaces, play in that central midfield position, and get to goal. And so I think that's the identity of this team. And when your owner, your co-owner, Jorge Mas, who is honestly one of the more powerful and vociferous owners in the league, when he comes out and says, before Javier Mascherano is introduced, saying, we're going to attack, we're going to win games 4-3, not 1-0. Whoever comes in here better understand that. Well, that's the message. And I think Javier Mascherano now, with the signings that they've made, it's clear that they want to continue to outscore their opponents. And I will say, though, they did address the back line. I know we've discussed that a lot. Can they defend? Can they defend in transition? And one of those players, Maximiliano Falcon, is a Chilean center back, very athletic, the type of player that's very aggressive, a bit of a ball hawk. And I think that's the type of center back that they truly want. It will still be risk-taking in a lot of ways, but I think Inter Miami is still a team that just wants to outscore you. And with Messi and that sort of that stable of players around him, young players, 21, 22, 23, I think it bodes pretty well for them.
Now, Felipe, as a former center back, I take exception to what Jorge Mas is saying, because defense wins championships, right? What do they say? The goals win games, but defense wins championships. So at some point, they have to address that back line. They gave up 49 goals in the regular season last year. Probably not good enough. Good enough to win the Supporters' Shield, but obviously it demonstrated it wasn't good enough in the playoffs. Let's talk about Luis Suarez, though, because I saw him playing the other day, and he looked like some of the guys I run around with in the Sunday League with his knee.
Yeah.
What does his future look like? Do you think he can keep it together, get pasted together? How much magic spray is he going to need to last this whole season?
Yeah, they're going to have to go to Costco to get that Costco level of magic spray. Listen, I saw the preseason as well. And last year, listen, my bold statement for 2024 is that Luis Suarez wouldn't make it to the end of the season. So I was definitely very wrong there. Over 20 goals, really played well and scored the type of goals that Luis Suarez scores. Now, I think I'm going to take the under here in 2025. I don't know, Jimmy, man. I don't know if he can handle it again. And remember, where this team in Miami really fell through, it was their legs at the end of the season. They won the Supporters' Shield. They scored over 70 goals. They set a points record, and then they're out in that bye round of the playoffs. And credit to Atlanta United, who just knew how to play against them. But also, that was a team that just ran out of legs. They didn't have the depth. And in talking to Chris Henderson, now in Atlanta United, the former sporting director, when I asked him, what do you take away from Inter Miami and what do you bring to Atlanta United? The thing he said was depth. And so does this team have the depth? Do they have another center forward, Jimmy, that can play behind Luis Suarez and come in and really score goals and not depend so much on the aging legs of the Uruguayan legend? But Luis Suarez, he's going to be a focal point. He's the one that is coming out. He's talking to the press. He's setting the tone for the team. He's the one that has said that they're essentially embarrassed with the way that it ended last year. So he's going to be the guy until he's not. And that's going to be interesting to see in 2025, no doubt.
He's going to be the guy until he's not. So if he ends up not being the guy at some point in this season, Felipe, who does Miami turn to for those goals?
Well, it's interesting because, again, Messi can play. You can play Messi as a false nine. I think if there's one manager that understands that, it's going to be Javier Mascherano. He played in that system at Barcelona with Messi in that role. But if you look at the starting 11, you mentioned Allende, Segovia, who, this is a young Venezuelan who is really viewed in Venezuela as a jewel of their national team. Scored a big goal for them, just 21 years old, scored a big goal against Brazil in a World Cup qualifier. And this is a guy that is very intense on the ball, wants to get to goal, wants to score. Same with Allende. There's actually a report now in South America of another attacking midfielder that can play as a forward coming out of Racing, the current Copa Sudamericana champions, another 21-year-old that is set to be signed by Inter Miami. So I think it's sort of a goal by committee and not necessarily just that number 9 position. Perhaps that's why Leo Campana was let go to New England, because they don't want to play with that back to goal type of center forward if Luis Suarez isn't in. So I think they're going to have options, but it's going to look a bit different tactically.
All right, Felipe, I know the CONCACAF Champions Cup is kicking off midweek, but on the weekend, MLS starts. Inter Miami are the betting favorites to win MLS Cup. Is that a good bet or a not so good bet?
I mean, I don't think it's a bad bet, honestly. You look at what they did last season, and Claudia mentioned it. The pressure, I think, on this team is going to help them. I do think it will motivate them. I think what we don't know about Inter Miami is the coach. You know, like what type of adjustments does he make? Who are the players that he really trusts? You know, who does Mascherano trust when they're down 2 goals or when they're up 2 goals and they want to continue to pile it on? Like, I think that's what we're going to notice about Inter Miami in 2025. They have the tools. They've done it. You know, the team wasn't taken apart after winning the Supporters Shield. I think really is what is their priority in 2025. They have the Club World Cup where they are going to be, and this is no shade to the Seattle Sounders, but Inter Miami is going to fly the flag for Major League Soccer, and how they do is going to say a lot about the league. And so I think they're really focusing on the Club World Cup, but MLS Cup is I think it's right up there. It's sort of that cherry that they really want. And so I don't think it's a bad bet. I think they can repeat the type of season, maybe not a record-breaking season, but they should be at the top of the East.
Felipe, finally, I'm going to end with a question that everybody wants to know the answer to. Will we see Messi play in tomorrow's game?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Javier Mascherano was pretty straightforward yesterday. I think he didn't like the report, you know, that was put out there that Leo Messi doesn't like to play in the cold, that he wasn't willing to play in the cold, and he came out and said flat out he will play. You know, Javier Mascherano turned it to more of a is this game even going to happen? And so, you know, listen, I don't think there's a South American on the planet that loves playing in the snow. So
nobody likes it. I mean, look at you. Yeah. You escaped to Puerto Rico.
Exactly. That's why I'm here for a week before I need to go back for the MLS season. So I think he'll be there. It's not going to be pretty, though. I don't think this is going to be a game we're going to remember for the aesthetics.